All right. So, just finished Anatomy and Physiology, Chapter 1. Good stuff. Actually, did learn a couple things. I decided I'm going to go ahead and try to catch up on the morning of today for the Bible. And maybe... we'll see how I'm feeling after the first one, second ones, if I do both. I'd like to try just doing one, though. Before that, though, I need to remember, I need to take my pills, because I forgot yesterday. Oh, this water's good. All right. Okay. So Bible AV11. So that'll be Leviticus 1 through 9. So, without further ado, JW Library. Bible, Leviticus, AV11. Leviticus 1. And Jehovah called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, if any one of you would present an offering to Jehovah from the domestic animals, you should present your offering from the herd or from the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he should present a sound male animal. He should present it of his own free will before Jehovah at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted in his behalf to make atonement for him. Then the young bull must be slaughtered before Jehovah, and the sons of Aaron, the priests, will present the blood and sprinkle the blood on all sides of the altar, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The burnt offering should be skinned and cut into pieces. The sons of Aaron, the priests, are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. The sons of Aaron, the priests, will arrange the pieces of the offering with the head and the suet over the wood that is on the fire on the altar. Its intestines and its shanks will be washed with water, and the priest is to make all of its smoke on the altar as a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. If his offering for a burnt offering is from the flock, from the young rams or the goats, he should present a sound male. It is to be slaughtered at the north side of the altar before Jehovah, and the sons of Aaron, the priests, will sprinkle its blood on all sides of the altar. He will cut it up into pieces, and with its head and its suet, the priest will arrange them over the wood on the fire on the altar. He will wash the intestines and the shanks with water, and the priest will present all of it and make it smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. However, if he offers birds as a burnt offering to Jehovah, he will present his offering from the turtle doves or the young pigeons. The priest will present it at the altar and nip off its head and make it smoke on the altar, but its blood should be drained out on the side of the altar. He should remove its crop and its feathers and throw them beside the altar to the east, to the place for the ashes. He will split it at its wings without dividing it into two parts. Then the priest will make it smoke on the altar over the wood that is on the fire. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. Leviticus 2. Now, if someone presents a grain offering to Jehovah, his offering must be fine flour, and he should pour oil on it and put frankincense on it. Then he will bring it to the sons of Aaron, the priests, and the priest will take a handful of the fine flour and oil and all its frankincense, and he will make a smoke as a token offering on the altar, an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. Whatever is left of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons, as something most holy from Jehovah's offerings made by fire. If you present a grain offering that has been baked in the oven, it should be of fine flour, unleavened ring-shaped loaves mixed with oil, or unleavened wafers spread with oil. If your offering is a grain offering from the griddle, it should be of fine unleavened flour mixed with oil. It should be broken into pieces, and you are to pour oil on it. It is a grain offering. If your offering is a grain offering prepared in a pan, it should be made of fine flour with oil. You should bring the grain offering that was made of these to Jehovah, and it will be presented to the priest, who will bring it near to the altar. And the priest will lift off some of the grain offering as a token offering, and make it smoke on the altar as an offering made by fire of a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. What is left of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons as something most holy of Jehovah's offerings by fire. No grain offering that you present to Jehovah should be leavened, for you must not make any sourdough or honey smoke as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. You may present them to Jehovah as an offering of the first fruits, but they must not be brought to the altar as a pleasing aroma. Every grain offering you make is to be seasoned with salt, and you must not allow the salt of the covenant of your God to be missing from your grain offering. Along with every offering of yours, you will present salt. If you present the grain offering of the first ripe fruits to Jehovah, you should present new grain, roasted with fire, coarsely crushed new kernels, as the grain offering of your first ripe fruits. You are to put oil on it and place frankincense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest will make it smoke as a token offering, that is, some of the coarse grain and oil along with all its frankincense, as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. Leviticus 3. If his offering is a communion sacrifice, and if he is presenting it from the herd, whether a male or a female, he should present a sound animal before Jehovah. He is to lay his hand on the head of his offering, and it will be slaughtered at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priests, will sprinkle the blood on all sides of the altar. He will present part of the communion sacrifice as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. The fat that covers the intestines, all the fat that surrounds the intestines, and the two kidneys with the fat on them that is near the loins, he will also remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys. Aaron's sons will make it smoke on the altar on top of the burnt offering that is placed on the wood that is over the fire. It is an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. If his offering is from the flock for a communion sacrifice to Jehovah, he will present a sound male or a female animal. If he is presenting a young ram as his offering, then he will present it before Jehovah. He will lay his hand on the head of his offering, and it will be slaughtered in front of the tent of meeting. Aaron's sons will sprinkle its blood on all sides of the altar. He will present the fat from the communion sacrifice as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. He will remove the entire fat tail near the backbone, the fat that covers the intestines, all the fat that surrounds the intestines, and the two kidneys with the fat on them that is near the loins. He will also remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys. And the priest will make it smoke on the altar as food, an offering made by fire to Jehovah. If his offering is a great goat, or is a great goat, why did I say that? Is a goat, oh, greatest of all time, then he will present it before Jehovah. He will lay his hand on its head, and it will be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's sons must sprinkle its blood on all sides of the altar. The part he will present as his offering made by fire to Jehovah is the fat that covers the intestines, all the fat that surrounds the intestines, and the two kidneys with the fat on them that is near the loins. He will also remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys. The priest will make them smoke on the altar as food, an offering made by fire for a pleasing aroma. All the fat belongs to Jehovah. It is a lasting statute for your generations and all your dwelling places. You must not eat any fat or any blood at all. Leviticus 4. Jehovah went on to say to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, if someone sins unintentionally by doing any of the things that Jehovah commanded should not be done, if the anointed priest sins and brings guilt on the people, then he must present a sound young bull to Jehovah as a sin offering for the sin he committed. He will bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before Jehovah and lay his hand on the bull's head, and he is to slaughter the bull before Jehovah. Then the anointed priest will take some of the bull's blood and bring it into the tent of meeting. And the priest will dip his finger in the blood and spatter some of the blood 7 times before Jehovah in front of the curtain of the holy place. The priest will also put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of perfumed incense, which is before Jehovah in the tent of meeting. And he will pour all the rest of the bull's blood at the base of the altar of the burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. But as for the skin of the bull and all its flesh along with its head, its shanks, its intestines, and its dung, all the rest of the bull he will have to take to the outskirts of the camp to a clean place where the ashes are discarded, and he will burn it on wood in the fire. It should be burnt where the ashes are discarded. Now, if the entire assembly of Israel has become guilty by committing a sin unintentionally, But the congregation was unaware that they had done something that Jehovah commanded them not to do, and then the sin becomes known. The congregation must present a young bull for a sin offering and bring it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the assembly will lay their hands on the bull's head before Jehovah, and the bull will be slaughtered before Jehovah. Then the anointed priest will bring some of the bull's blood into the tent of meeting. The priest is to dip his finger into the blood and spatter some of it 7 times before Jehovah in front of the curtain. He will then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar, that is, before Jehovah, which is in the tent of meeting, and he will pour all the rest of the blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which at the entrance of the tent of meeting, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He will remove all its fat and make it smoke on the altar. He is to do to the bull just as he did to the other bull of the sin offering. That is how he will do it. And the priest will make atonement for them, and they will be forgiven. He will have the bull taken to the outskirts of the camp and will burn it, just as he burnt the first bull. It is a sin offering for the congregation. When a chieftain unintentionally sins by doing one of all the things that Jehovah his God commands should not be done and has become guilty, or if he becomes aware of a sin that he has committed against the commandment, then he must bring a sound young male goat as his offering. He will lay his hand on the head of the young goat and slaughter it in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered before Jehovah. It is a sin offering. The priest will take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and he will pour the rest of its blood at the base of the altar on the burnt offering. He will make all its fat smoke on the altar like the fat of the communion sacrifice, and the priest will make atonement for him for his sin, and it will be forgiven him. If anyone of the people of the land sins unintentionally and becomes guilty by doing one of the things that Jehovah commands should not be done, or if he becomes aware of a sin that he has committed, then he should bring a sound young female goat as his offering for the sin he has committed. He will lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter the sin offering in the same place as the burnt offering. The priest will take some of its blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he will pour all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. He will remove all its fat, just as the fat is removed from the communion sacrifice, and the priest will make it smoke on the altar as a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. And the priest will make atonement for him, and it will be forgiven him. But if he offers a lamb as a sin offering, he should bring a sound female lamb. He will lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it as a sin offering in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest will take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering, and he will pour all the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He will remove all its fat the same way that the fat of the young ram of the communion sacrifice is removed, and the priest will make them smoke on the altar on top of Jehovah's offerings made by fire. And the priest will make atonement for him for the sin that he has committed, and it will be forgiven. Leviticus 5. If someone sins because he has heard a public call to testify, and he is a witness, or has seen or learned about it, and he does not report it, then he will answer for his error. Or when a person touches anything unclean, whether the dead body of an unclean animal, an unclean domestic animal, or an unclean swarming creature, he is unclean and has become guilty, even if he does not realize it. Or in case someone, without being aware of it, touches human uncleanness, anything unclean that may make him unclean, and he comes to know it, then he becomes guilty. Or if someone rashly swears to do something, whether it is to do good or to do evil, no matter what it may be, and he was unaware of it, but then he realizes that he has sworn rashly, he has become guilty. If he becomes guilty as respects to one of these things, then he must confess in what way he has sinned. He will also bring his guilt offering to Jehovah for the sin that he committed, namely a female from the flock, either a female lamb or a young female goat for a sin offering. Then the priest will make atonement for him for his sin. If, though, he cannot afford a sheep, he must bring to Jehovah 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons as his guilt offering for the sin, one for a sin offering and one for a burnt offering. He is to bring them to the priest, who will present first the one for the sin offering and snip off its head at the front of its neck without severing it. He will spatter some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, but the remainder of the blood will be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. He will handle the other one as a burnt offering according to the regular procedure, and the priest will make atonement for him for the sin that he has committed, and it will be forgiven him. Now, if he cannot afford 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, he must bring as his offering for his sin a tenth of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering. He should not add oil to it or place frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. He will bring it to the priest, and the priest will take from it his handful as a token offering, and make it smoke on the altar on top of Jehovah's offerings made by fire. It is a sin offering. The priest will make atonement for him for the sin that he has committed, any one of these sins, and it will be forgiven him. The remainder of the offering will become the priest's, just like the grain offering. Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, if someone behaves unfaithfully by unintentionally sinning against the holy things of Jehovah, he is to bring to Jehovah a sound ram from the flock as a guilt offering. Its value in silver shekels is set according to the standard shekel of the holy place. And he will make compensation for the sin he has committed against the holy place, and he will also add a fifth of its value. He will give it to the priest, so that the priest may make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering, and it will be forgiven him. If someone sins by doing any of the things that Jehovah commands should not be done, even if he is not aware of it, he is still guilty and will answer for his error. He should bring to the priest a sound ram from the flock according to the estimated value for a guilt offering. Then the priest will make atonement for him for the unintentional mistake that he unknowingly committed, and it will be forgiven him. It is a guilt offering. He has certainly become guilty of sinning against Jehovah. Leviticus 6. Jehovah went on to say to Moses, if someone sins and behaves unfaithfully towards Jehovah by deceiving his neighbor in connection with something entrusted to him, or something deposited with him, or he robs or defrauds his neighbor, or he finds something lost and is deceptive about it, and if he swears falsely over any such sin he may commit, this is what he should do. If he has sinned and is guilty, he must return what he stole, what he extorted, and what he took by fraud, what he was entrusted to him, or the lost thing that he found, or anything about which he swore falsely, and he must make full compensation for it, and he will add to it a fifth of its value. He will give it to the owner of the day his guilt is proved, and he will bring to the priest as his guilt offering to Jehovah a sound ram from the flock according to the assessed value for a guilt offering. The priest will make atonement for him before Jehovah, and he will be forgiven for anything he may have done resulting in his guilt. Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, command Aaron and his sons and say, this is the law of the burnt offering. The burnt offering will remain on the hearth on the altar all night until the morning, and the fire will be kept burning on the altar. The priest will clothe himself with his official dress of linen, and he will put the linen shorts on over his flesh. Then he will remove the ashes of the burnt offering that the fire had consumed on the altar and place them beside the altar. Then he will take off his garments and put on other garments and take the ashes to a clean place outside the camp. The fire will be kept burning on the altar. It must not go out. The priest must burn wood on it each morning and arrange the burnt offering over it. And he will make the fat of the communion sacrifice a smoke over it. Fire will be kept constantly burning on the altar. It must not go out. Now this is the law of the grain offering. You sons of Aaron are to present it before Jehovah in front of the altar. One of them will take a handful from the fine flour of the grain offering and some of its oil and all the frankincense that is on the grain offering. And he will make it smoke on the altar as a pleasing aroma for a token offering to Jehovah. Aaron and his sons will eat what is left of it. It will be eaten as unleavened bread in a holy place. They will eat it in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It should not be baked with anything leavened. I have given it as their share out of my offerings made by fire. It is something most holy, like the sin offering and like the guilt offering. Every male among the sons of Aaron will eat it. It is their permanent allowance throughout your generations from Jehovah's offerings made by fire. Everything that touches them will become holy. Jehovah spoke again to Moses. This is the offering that Aaron and his sons will present to Jehovah on the day he is anointed. The tenth of an ephah of fine flour is a regular grain offering, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening. It will be made with oil on a griddle. You will bring it well mixed with oil, and present it in pieces as a baked product of the grain offering as a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. The anointed priest who succeeds him from among his sons will make it. It is a lasting regulation. As a whole offering, it will be made to smoke to Jehovah. Every grain offering of a priest should be a whole offering. It must not be eaten. Jehovah spoke again to Moses and said, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is the law of the sin offering. In the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, the sin offering will also be slaughtered before Jehovah. It is a most holy thing. The priest who offers it for sin will eat it. It will be eaten in a holy place, in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. Everything that touches its flesh will become holy, and when anyone spatters some of its blood on his garment, you should wash what was spattered with blood in a holy place. The earthenware vessel in which it was boiled is to be shattered. But if it was boiled in a copper vessel, then the vessel must be scoured and washed with water. Every male among the priests will eat it. It is something most holy. However, no sin offering is to be eaten if some of its blood is brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy place. It is to be burnt with fire." Leviticus 7. This is the law of the guilt offering. It is something most holy. They will slaughter the guilt offering in the place where they slaughter the burnt offerings, and its blood should be sprinkled on all sides of the altar. He will present all its fat, including the fat tail, the fat that covers the intestines, and the 2 kidneys with their fat that is near the loins. He will also remove the appendage of the liver along with the kidneys. The priest will make them smoke on the altar as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. It is a guilt offering. Every male among the priests will eat it, and it should be eaten in a holy place. It is something most holy. The law regarding the sin offering applies to the guilt offering. It belongs to the priest who makes atonement with it. When the priest presents the burnt offering for someone, the skin of the burnt offering that was presented to the priest will become his. Every grain offering that is baked in the oven or prepared in the pan or on the griddle belongs to the priest who presents it. It will become his. But every grain offering that is mixed with oil or that is dry will be for all of Aaron's sons. Each will have an equal share. Now, this is the law of the communion sacrifice. That one may present to Jehovah. If he presents it as an expression of thanksgiving, he will present along with the thanksgiving sacrifice unleavened ring-shaped loaves mixed with oil, unleavened wafers spread with oil, and ring-shaped loaves made with fine flour, but well mixed and blended with oil. He will present his offering along with ring-shaped loaves of leavened bread and the thanksgiving sacrifice of his communion sacrifices. He is to present from it one of each offering as a sacred portion to Jehovah. It will belong to the priest who sprinkles the blood of the communion sacrifices. The flesh of the thanksgiving sacrifice of his communion sacrifices is to be eaten on the day he offers it. He must not save any of it until morning. If the sacrifice of his offering is a vow or a voluntary offering, it is to be eaten on the day he presents his sacrifice, and what is left of it may also be eaten on the next day. But whatever is left of the flesh and of the sacrifice on the 3rd day is to be burnt with fire. However, if any of the flesh of his communion sacrifice is eaten on the 3rd day, the one presenting it will not be accepted with approval. It will not be credited to him. It is an offensive thing, and the person who eats some of it will answer for his error. Flesh that touches anything unclean is not to be eaten. It is to be burned with fire. Everyone who is clean may eat the clean flesh. But any person who is unclean and eats the flesh of the communion sacrifice, which is for Jehovah, that person must be cut off from his people. If someone touches anything unclean, whether the uncleanness of a man or an unclean animal or any unclean disgusting thing, and eats some of the flesh of the communion sacrifice, which is for Jehovah, that person must be cut off from his people. Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelites, you must not eat any fat or a..." Oh, geez, sorry. Another spasm. Okay. You must not eat any fat of a young bull or a young ram or a goat. The fat of an animal found dead and the fat of an animal killed by another animal may be used for any other purpose, but you must never eat it. For whoever eats fat from an animal that he presents as an offering made by fire to Jehovah must be cut off from his people. You must not eat any blood in any of your dwelling places, whether that of birds or that of animals. Anyone who eats any blood must be cut off from his people. Jehovah went on to speak to Moses, saying, Tell the Israelites, whoever presents his communion sacrifice to Jehovah will bring part of the offering from his communion sacrifice to Jehovah. He will bring in his own hands of the fat along with the breast as an offering made by fire to Jehovah, and he will wave it back and forth as a wave offering before Jehovah. The priest will make the fat smoke on the altar, but the breast will belong to Aaron and his sons. You will give the right leg as a sacred portion to the priest from your communion sacrifices, the son of Aaron who presents the blood of the communion sacrifices, and the fat will have the right leg as his portion. For I take the breast of the wave offering and the leg of the sacred portion from the communion sacrifices of the Israelites, and I give them to Aaron, the priest, and his sons as a lasting regulation for the Israelites. This was the portion from Jehovah's offerings made by fire to be set aside for the priests, for Aaron and his sons, on the day he presented them to serve as priests to Jehovah. Jehovah commanded to give them this portion from the Israelites on that day he anointed them. It is a permanent statute for their generations. This is the law concerning the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the installation sacrifice, and the communion sacrifice, just as Jehovah commanded Moses on Mount Sinai in the day he commanded the Israelites to present their offerings to Jehovah in the wilderness of Sinai. Leviticus 8. Jehovah continued to speak to Moses, saying, Take Aaron and his sons with him, the garments, the anointing oil, the bull of the sin offering, the 2 rams, and the basket of unleavened bread, and make all the assembly gather together at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then Moses did just as Jehovah had commanded him, and the assembly gathered together at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Moses now said to the assembly, This is what Jehovah has commanded us to do. So Moses brought Aaron and his sons near and washed them with water. After that, he put the robe on him, wrapped him with the sash, clothed him with the sleeveless coat, and put the ephod on him and tied it with the woven belt of the ephod, binding it securely on him. Next, he placed the breastpiece on him and put the Urim and Thummim in the breastpiece. Then he placed the turban on his head, and he put on front of the turban the shining plate of gold, the holy sign of dedication, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Moses then took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it, and sanctified them. After that, he spattered some of it 7 times on the altar, and anointed the altar and all its utensils and the basin and its stands in order to sanctify them. Finally, he poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head and anointed him in order to sanctify him. Moses then brought Aaron's sons near and clothed them with robes and wrapped them with sashes and put headgear on them, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Then he brought the bull of the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the bull of the sin offering. Moses slaughtered it and took the blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar on all sides, and he purified the altar from sin. But the rest of the blood he poured at the base of the altar in order to sanctify it, to make atonement on it. After that, he took all the fat that was on the intestines, the appendage of the liver, and the 2 kidneys and their fat, and Moses made them smoke on the altar. Then he had the rest of the bull, its skin, its flesh, and its dung, burned with fire outside the camp, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. He now brought the ram of the burnt offering near, and Aaron and his sons laid their hand on the head of the ram. Moses then slaughtered it and sprinkled the blood on all sides of the altar. He cut the ram into its pieces, and Moses made the head, the pieces, and the suet smoke. He washed the intestines and shanks with water, and Moses made the entire ram smoke on the altar. It was a burnt offering as a pleasing aroma. It was an offering made by fire to Jehovah, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Then he brought the second ram, the ram of the installation, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the ram's head. Moses slaughtered it and took some of its blood and put it on Aaron's right earlobe and on the thumb of his right hand and on the big toe of his right foot. Next, Moses brought Aaron's sons forward and put some of the blood on their right earlobe and on the thumb of their right hand and on the big toe of their right foot. But Moses sprinkled the rest of the blood on all sides of the altar. Then he took the fat tail, all the fat that was on the intestines, the appendage of the liver, the 2 kidneys and their fat, and the right leg. He took out of the basket of unleavened bread that was before Jehovah 1 unleavened ring-shaped loaf, 1 ring-shaped loaf of oiled bread, and 1 wafer, and then placed them on the pieces of fat and the right leg. After that, he put all of them on the palms of Aaron and the palms of his sons and began to wave them back and forth as a wave offering before Jehovah. Then Moses took them from their hands and made them smoke on the altar on top of the burnt offering. They were an installation sacrifice as a pleasing aroma. It was an offering made by fire to Jehovah. Moses then took the breast and waved it back and forth as a wave offering before Jehovah. From the installation ram, it became the portion for Moses, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. And Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood that was on the altar and spattered it on Aaron and his garments, and on the son and his sons, and the garments of his sons who were with him. Thus he sanctified Aaron and his garments, and his sons and their garments. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, "Boil the flesh at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and you will eat it there with the bread that is in the installation basket, just as I was commanded. Aaron and his sons will eat it. Whatever is left over of the flesh and the bread you will burn with fire. You must not go out from the entrance of the tent of meeting, because for 7 days, until the days for completing your installation are over, because it will take 7 days to install you as priests." Jehovah commanded that we do what we have done today in order to make atonement for you. You will stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days and carry out your obligation to Jehovah, so that you may not die, for so I have been commanded. And Aaron and his sons did all the things that Jehovah had commanded by means of Moses. Leviticus 9. On the 8th day, Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said to Aaron, "Take for yourself a young calf for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering, sound ones, and present them before Jehovah. But you will say to the Israelites, take a male goat for a sin offering, and a calf and a young ram, each a year old, sound ones for a burnt offering, and a bull and a ram for a communion sacrifices to Jehovah. Sacrifice them before Jehovah, and a grain offering mixed with oil, for today Jehovah will appear to you." So they took what Moses had commanded before the tent of meeting. Then the whole assembly came forward and stood before Jehovah. And Moses said, "This is what Jehovah has commanded you to do, so that the glory of Jehovah may appear to you." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Approach the altar and present your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make atonement in your own behalf, and in behalf of your house, and present the offerings of the people, and make atonement in their behalf, just as Jehovah had commanded." Aaron immediately approached the altar and slaughtered the calf of the sin offering that was for him. Then Aaron's sons presented the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar, and he poured the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He made the fat and the kidneys and the appendage of the liver from the sin offering smoke on the altar, just as Jehovah had commanded Moses. And he burnt the flesh and the skin with fire outside the camp. Then he slaughtered the burnt offering, and Aaron's sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it on all sides of the altar. They handed him the pieces of the burnt offering. Sorry, I got the hiccups. They handed him the pieces of the burnt offering along with the head, and he made them smoke on the altar. Further, he washed the intestines and the shanks and made them smoke on the burnt offering on the altar. He then presented the offering of the people and took the goats of the sin offering that was for the people and slaughtered it and made a sin offering with it like the first one. And he presented the burnt offering and handled it according to the regular procedure. He next presented the grain offering, filling his hand with some of it and making it smoke on the altar, in addition to the burnt offering of the morning. After that, he slaughtered the bull and the ram of the communion sacrifice and was for the people. Then Aaron's sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it around on all sides of the altar. As for the pieces of fat of the bull, the fat tail of the ram, the fat covering the internal organs, the kidneys, and the appendage of the liver, they placed all those pieces of fat on the breasts, after which he made the pieces of fat smoke on the altar. But the breasts and the right leg of Aaron waved back and forth as a wave offering before Jehovah, just as Moses had commanded. Then Aaron raised his hands toward the people and blessed them, and came down from making the sin offering and the burnt offering and the communion sacrifices. Finally, Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting and came out and blessed the people. Jehovah's glory now appeared to all the people, and fire came out from Jehovah and began consuming the burnt offering and the pieces of fat on the altar. When all the people saw it, they started shouting, and they fell with their faces to the ground. End of AV11.